go to some colleges as a jury or as a visiting faculty, then what I notice is like how much do we really local landscape is something which have always caught my attention, because in many cases the college would be very close to Western Ghats, or the college would be in a very green area. The students know about geography. Again, how much do we know about local history? And again, how much do we know about the local? I think these are important. In the whole course, what we call as architecture. So I think things are changing now. I think things are changing, but definitely, I would say still we are trained in a very much a Western mold, where we are taught Roman architecture, Greek architecture much before, or very much before we learn about our local architecture. So somewhere we are all trained in a Eurocentric mode. I think that has to change, and I don't think it can happen in a day. It kind of it will take a long effort. But I guess since you're all teachers, maybe while making a syllabus and things like that, it's something which can you can keep in mind. Also, one more thing, I attended a conference in UK last year about climate change, where I was the only speaker from India. There was a speaker from Pakistan, there was a speaker from Turkey. Most of the speakers were all from Europe and US. So in that whole seminar, as I participated, one thing which we noticed, including the other two people, is that the level of documentation or the level of data we have in Kerala is not just in Kerala, in India, is very less compared to many of these other countries. And even to get data, it's maybe data would be available. How much of data do we know? They respect it, same with respect to climate. How much of data be as I went to that conference? And how much of respect we give to nature? Okay, we live in a very anthropocentric world where we think humans are the biggest people, and in the whole process, maybe post-industrialization, we have killed a lot of trees, we have killed a lot of animals, corals, uh, rainforests, wetlands, mangroves. I think we are kind of destroying, human beings are destroying the world in a faster pace than anything else. So I think that's again something which we should be conserved. We should be concerned about. And now, as I go through these slides, I think a lot of these things would come. And again, now United Nations have its own policies regarding climate change. They're saying greenhouse gases needs to come down by 45% in the uh, decade. Where they're planning for zero emissions by 2050, and we are talking of green jobs. We are talking of decarbonization and sustainable solutions for fossil fuels. So these are all things which we are working. And but I would say it needs to transfer, or as we discuss architecture, how much do we discuss notes?
Hello, sir. Sorry to interfere. So, while you're starting the session, please request to turn off the video so that the audio clarity will be much better.
Just the screen. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
ഇത് കളയല്ലേ this video drop ചെയ്യല്ലേ then you can off the video. Yeah. So I think this needs to go, right? Yeah. So first, how much do we know about Kerala? I think that's a first question. I guess as teachers, you all would be knowing, and it's a long strip of land which is 590 kilometers long and 30 to 120 kilometers of width. And we also have our rivers and backwaters. And I think that way, Kerala is pretty unique in its landscape. Yeah. And these are basic things I think as teachers, most of you would be knowing. Our whole land is actually sloping from the Western Ghats to the ocean. So whatever features we had, it's a cover, sacred grove, or wetlands, it all was a measure to stop the water from flowing across to the ocean. I think that was part of our landscape planning. And if we go from Malabar to Travancore, there is a continuous continuity in tradition. Of course, there are variations with respect to materials used, but we follow a general common pattern. And we also had a very clear picture of monsoon, which was almost, I would say, 110 days in a year, and it followed certain patterns, which today we don't have such strict patterns these days because of climate change again. But yes, it's part of our lifestyle and culture. And sacred groves were part of our landscape, and it's also kind of giving space for human beings. So we give space to spirits, we give space to animals, plants, whatever. So it's just giving some space for people or for things to exist. And this we had done long back 2002. This particular cover in the picture is from Ravi Verma's place in Kilimanur. It's a huge compound where there is a very interesting cover. And this is again a temple. It's not to show the temple landscape where you can see the groves and landscape or the structure which fits into the landscape well. And this is a typical structure how we planning. The sacred groves used to be in the southwest corner of the site, water bodies in the northeast, and then so that it allows a natural filtration and recharging. So all these things were kind of inherent in our planning systems. And it's the same with respect to whether you talk of a village, whether you talk of a residence. It's the same kind of planning system which they followed. It kind of integrated with the human population. We had clay tiles, granite. These were the basic materials. Now, when you talk of tile roofs, I would also say that it's it's not the kind of Mangalore tiles is only 150 years old. So we had thatch before that. We had country tiles. So that we can't really say that the Mangalore tile roof is a Kerala architecture. It's mostly come from Europe, but still the form, the slope, these are things which were there earlier too. And we had proper hierarchy, and then there were systems of flow. And sometimes courtyards were there, sometimes courtyards were not there, but still it allowed the breeze to flow, to protect the house from overheating. So these were natural systems which we followed while building. And you can see this is one house which we had documented: Ekashala, Dvishala, Trishala. I think these are things which again you all would be knowing. So we had systems where the design took care of natural flow of air and breeze, things like that. And this is one house which we had documented, and you can see it helped it helped for the natural flow of air, breeze, and how it kind of held or went along with nature. Another house, it's in a very interesting site, and remember, and just to make you people aware, many of these things which I'm showing now, a lot of them are not there today. So we will document it, and then after 2 years we'll find out that it's already broken down or it's not there anymore. So this one is not there anymore. Some of the examples which we are showing is the buildings have been pulled down. So this is again a long strip with the site was something like 5 meters by 60-meter long in the town. So again, an interesting example. Uh, this is how we kind of built. We building with lime, then which is breathable. Yeah. So there's a whole set of materials which were homogeneous for the entire building system. And this is how we took care of the climate. We had overhangs, protect from the sun and rains, and then we had false ceilings, which gave some kind of a tutter, again, which is a protective layer. We had verandas, and then we had attics, then we had wooden lattice, then we had these colopteras, beautiful ones, which allowed the breeze to flow in. It also allowed, then even small things like handrails, it allowed the breeze to flow in. The being very high in humidity, it was important for the air to flow. I think allowing the flow of air was the most important thing. And shades. I think these are things which very basic things of climatology, which our traditional buildings followed pretty well. This is the typical site where you can see a lot of plants. The entire site has a pond, it has a grove. Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. And now we come to the problems we had because of climate, because of our own carelessness, things like flood, which Kerala experienced for 2 to 3 years. Now, again, why or how that flood has happened is something which we need to look at. Now, after the floods were there, what was the result or what was the impact? We could figure out that the structures, the traditional structures, fared better than many of these modern buildings. Because they always, even buildings with laterite, lime, they fared far better than a lot of modern structures. And what are we building now? How are being built? It's again something which we all need to question ourselves. Are we meant for such buildings? Is our state meant for such buildings? And this is a typical way how our systems have changed. We build a traditional house would be there. We'll make it flat, and then later as it gets leaking or when the heat becomes too much, we cover it with a sheet above. So this is a typical way how building is happening in Kerala, at least till date. I think now there are changes. There are better structures being built, where climate is also into consideration. But this was how things were till some time back. How do we say we will have a sustainable future? What are the things which we can do? Is something which we should learn from the past, from our systems, which we have to learn. And now I come to some of the old examples and things which we already spoken about. A courtyard with a this is a Mullattaran nammal parayunndu. It's a jasmine plant, which again adds fragrance to the courtyard, and you can see the shading and the light and the breeze which comes into the house. This is a mana in way called Swarnath Mana, and this is Shaktan Pal, which we did early in 2002 to 5. We did the landscape of this place, a heritage garden, where personally I got introduced to the plants and the landscape of Kerala for the first time. And we had planted almost 500 species of plants. And I think, I guess that's again something which you all should think at the bachelor level, where the students can be introduced to the plants or the landscape of Kerala. The building, and this is part of the landscape. These are some of the seatings which we had done uh, uh, as part of the project in 2002 or 3. And we had a group of sculptors working with us, including people like Wilson and Alex Matthew. And so the project, after the project, many people thought it's built during Shaktan Tampuran's time, which was a compliment for us. And this is a courtyard with the rain, and which is not there anymore, right in the heart. These things often we are lucky to see before it gets pulled down. Many of them we don't get document, but we get to at least photograph some of them. This is again a house which is not there anymore in Panyal, near Shorano. And what I've heard is this house they sold for some 2 lakh rupees at that time, because that person needed some money. Same house, it's also nearby. Railway station in Thrissur, where which the Maharaja has had built uh, while he was constructing the station as a guest house for him. You can see the symbols of British and the Cochin state. So this is how our landscape has changed. You can see the forest cover. Yeah, how what has happened with our forest cover, how it's changed, and how the paddy field cultivation has come down. And I would say it's all part of our own understanding of the local, including language. Finally, climate change or things like that, or construction, we had a local system, or we had a local understanding how to do things here. But now what has happened is all the thought process is happening in the West, and we are people who implement the thought process. I'm not saying 100%, but in many areas it's like that. As architects, we would be knowing, we have product people would be coming to us and telling, okay, this is the latest material, it's come from Germany, or it's the latest material, please implement. And it's the same story anywhere. The field, they will say it's a new operation which is going to, it's worth 10 lakhs, and it's something most modern. So I think somehow our whole understanding of what is good, what is modern, uh, and what is development has to change. I think it's somewhere we are still under the colonial mindset. We have to somehow come out of it. I think that's very important, even to understand ourselves and our landscape. And many times when we show buildings or a project to some clients, they'll say, "Oh, it looks very good. It looks as if it's in Europe." So what does that mean? I think it's something which we have to really get out of our minds. I think this is something which is very, very critical. And these are Kodakkal, again, 2000 or 3000-year-old structures in Thrissur district. And it's there all over Kerala. And these are our prehistoric monuments. And how much of us as architects have seen this? I just saw this after graduation, since I started doing some work with archaeology. Then I had a chance to see many of this. But otherwise, I've not come across any of these structures while studying or earlier. I think it's very important to understand the local history. And since we learn local history, manipulate history and teach us or come to us and tell. I think that's somewhere very important. How to understand local history and local heritage. This is one house. This is one house in my. This is a temple near Shornur called Panjal, and these are photographs almost 20 years old. And I am actually scared to go to these places again because I'm very sure they would have done something. They would have added a tin roof. They would have added something else. They would have added concrete. So since these images are very good, I try not to go there. And these are images from Kashmir. It's somewhere near Jammu, and you can see this mud plastering, which is done by the local population, and the architecture is by the local population. It's not architect designed, but I would say it's any day better than any structure which we are designing. Yeah, it's a cowshed, and it's very much close to the architecture of Himachal. I think that area is somewhat similar. It has a timber roof. It has mud over it, and then it has mud walls. And you can see the lady of the house is doing the mud plastering. So it is something. I think Charles Correa had said once that human beings can used to know how to build their own structures, just like birds or animals. So somewhere, how to build a space for oneself, very inherent in human species. But it's something which we have lost as we develop. You know, so it's very important to come back or retrace what is there in our own system, because these people are doing it very easily. The village lady is doing the plastering. Now to do mud plasterings, we are doing some projects, or to do oxide, and many of these things, it's become so expensive that the normal people cannot afford it. It's become a luxury, just like how Ayurveda has become a luxury. Local architecture has become a luxury. I think it's we are only to blame for this whole scenario. So we have to think how to get out of that position. And you can see where the whole way the world is progressing or developing, where the carbon emissions are, how growth is happening. You can see all mostly it's in Europe, China, India, US, where all the black marks are there. You know, Africa is more or less clean, and Latin America is more or less clean. Projects. This is Vadakanalan Temple Conservation, which we work for almost 15 years. Still, it's going on. Some works we are still doing, and our role was more of where we had to kind of work along with the donor, the craftsman, the temple board, ASI, and these are initially we will do the condition assessment, where we kind of decide or see has to be done. These are these carpenter marks, what you see in the lower portion, and how much of it is bad, damaged, and what to replace. And you can see some of these, like, okay, the sculpture was covered by lime. So when we removed the lime, we could discover the sculpture again. So the many such things had happened, and you can see the traditional tools. Why I'm also showing these things is like how much of our students do learn these things. And again, what is our understanding of traditional architecture? It's something which is very critical. And I think we do documentation in colleges, but we hardly do any detailed analysis of the documented structures, or we hardly do any analysis of the spaces we had, or the traditional spaces we had. And we all what happens is many times we do the documentation or we do practice traditional architecture, and directly we start building Nalikatta, or we start copying the old structures, which is because then we don't develop, so we have to learn from what was there, or what kind of spaces they created, and what functions they serve for that population, and then we have to build for our time and age. I think that's very important. And this is a section of the temple complex. You can see laterite, lime, then again stone is used, copper is used. So this is a typical section where you have timber, copper, lime. These are the materials, and it's pretty sustainable. When you're talking of climate change and sustainability, I think it's very important to understand. Okay, now when we talk of things like lime, this is lime. India still has a lot of lime, but then all the lime is being taken by cement companies, which are huge. So finally, when you go to the market and look for lime, you might not get lime, or you might not get lime workers who are skilled enough to work with it. It's become super expensive. It's around, I would say, it's 1 to 10 times. If you can do something with cement in 100 rupees, lime has become 1,000 rupees. So how many people can really afford it? So something which was so simple, just so common in our land, has become uncommon or has become rare. I think this is something which we have to really look at. And again, when you work with lime, a lot of these old lime structures, it stands 600 years. We still have houses which are 250-year old. Many of the cement structures, we still have not done enough research on cement, but a lot of structures we see are breaking down in 30 years, 40 years. So we need to do more research on these materials. One thing is for sure, lime is a breathing material, and it allows air to pass through. It's more comfortable, it's more eco-sensitive. So these are definite plus points for the lime. And this is how we made it. We had people who knew how to collect the raw materials. Some had to be collected from um, forest kind of lands, and then mixed, and then you keep it for 15 days, and then finally after that you start using the material. So this is a know-how which our villages or our people had, but sadly we don't have it anymore, or things become easier. It's just like how you make an Ayurvedic medicine. Now for making an Ayurvedic medicine, you may have to get in ingredients, mix it. Ideally you have to make it at home and then prepare it. Now you go and buy a paracetamol. It's something which you can just go to the shop, pay 10 rupees and buy and eat. But if you say which is better, it's a question which we all need to answer. And this is copper, how copper was used. You can see we had reheated old copper. And copper again, it's a material which was used in Europe and all in 2000, in the 13th, 14th centuries. So when we did a bit of research, we found that a lot of copper has come from Europe in these old structures. But now in the green architecture, what we try to follow, they say copper is a very green material. And this is how wood was brought down to mill, and it was designed with timber. And this is how we worked with the local craftsmen. For this whole project, we worked with almost 500 craftsmen or 500 workers, most of them traditional workers. So I think such projects are important also for the knowledge to be intact. Unless and until we give them work, they will get into other works. Even without giving, they are getting into concreting, or they're getting into contracting. So these, unless and until we sustain the workforces, we lose the technology also. This is a system on the top left corner. What you see is called Puram Kotta. Before you make the main structure, a sample is done outside, and then once things fit in, you take it and put it inside. So it's very much like prefabricated structures which we make out of steel today, which you just make it in the factory, you come and fit it in. It's very similar, and the traditional architecture is very similar to the prefabricated architecture. And these are the roof structures. Many of these carpenters are also not there anymore. There was a person called Tankamani Ashari who was the main carpenter when we started the work. He's not there anymore. So as the time goes off, we are losing people also. So it's very important to document them, to see how much of it can be conserved. Yeah. And this is a sculpture in the roof. And this is a protective oil for the wood. Just like how we make vegetable oil or coconut oil for the hair, there is a system of boiling, and you add things like turmeric and many other ingredients, and then it's used as a protective coat for the wood. And this is a very local, it's a local knowledge. And this again, it's something I just wanted to show, because now when we have things like flood and things like that, this is a normal valley which we had in all our villages and towns. The moment we converted the valley to compound walls, I think we had the floods. That was a big issue. The compound created a lot of issue. So it was something which allowed breeze, something which allowed water to flow through. So I thought when I saw this picture, it should be included. It's connected to climate change, things like that. And this is one structure which we lost in Thrissur last year. It was a it's a 150-year-old structure. It was facing the Swaraj ground, and very close to colonial architecture, and built by the church in Thrissur. And you can see it just got pulled down on one fine day when they said the structure is weak, or is a part of the building started showing cracks or things like that. But it could have been easily conserved. Yeah, it could have been easily conserved. But then if you see the next slide, you see this is something which we saw after 3 days, when they started pulling it down. So here, what particularly I want to say is not exactly just about conserving the structure. Now, if you see the structure, it is kind of facing the main road. It's without any setback. It's 100% coverage, and it's built 4 floors. Yeah. So when you have such a structure, when you pull it down, what happens is it's impossible with today's regulations to build some structure like this, where you get such a lot of area. Now, suppose this old structure is 25,000 square feet. You can only build 10 or 15,000 square feet today, because it's not possible to leave the setbacks. It's almost touching the other structure. So I think Indian cities were all about being building dens. I think that was very important in our cities. To build dens was very important, and this is 100% coverage in the plot. It's 100% coverage. And what happens if it gets pulled down? Now, let's come to the next question. Now, the corporation has pulled it down. Fine. One, we can't build so much of area. Secondly, we are losing so much of energy. We had so much of wood in it, so much of laterite, so much of lime, so much of so there's a huge amount of material which is going as a waste. We're just throwing the whole material, and then we are investing money to build this structure. Again, they're going to invest something like 3 to 4 crores. A conservation work could have been done with 50 to 1 CR, or even less than that. So instead of that, once you pull it down, you're losing area, you're losing the whole material, and you're not being sustainable. You are again bringing all the granite and cement and brick and all what not. ACP, the entire materials brought down to this, and you're building something new. So it's a loss in every count. It's a loss with respect to sustainability. It's a loss with respect to area. It's a loss with respect to money. Architects, which we need to understand. So that's why I'm explaining this to you, because many people think we can just pull down old buildings, something, build something new, but it's not always the smart solution. Yeah, because we are also losing area on area. We are also losing on uh, many different counts. So that's something which we need to study. Maybe colleges need to study. You need to study cities. What happens when you pull down a whole stretch of old structures and build a tower in the center? Is it right for the city? It's something which you people have to study. And yeah, this is some work which we did in Guruvayur, the structure of the roof. We had documented an entire roof for one project where each of the detail is documented and worked out. And this is again, I was interested to tell you people, because this is something which students should learn, I feel, because as students in Kerala, they should learn what was the heritage all about, because it's such a complex structure, and the kind of roof structure which we had in Kerala, I don't think it was there in any other place in the world. And we don't learn it as students of architecture. We don't learn it enough. I think it's something which is highly important, because we are also losing structures. That's also a reason. And this is again a structure which we have already lost. It's a temple near Trishur Ayantol, and someone just told me, okay, they're pulling it down. Why don't you come and take few photos? So we just went there, did a very basic crude documentation, whatever we could do in 1 or 2 days, and it's brought down. The structure is brought down, and they're trying to do this structure with RCC rafters. Why, we don't know. What's the need? We are not very sure. So finally, this is a structure. If architects themselves are not very much aware, if the students are not much aware about these structures, cannot expect the PWD engineers or the Devasam board engineers to be aware. So I think it's the first job for architects to be aware, to understand what was the whole heritage about, what was the local plants or trees about, before we can expect the public to understand. This is again a structure luckily could save. It's a Paranur Palace, something close to the Paranur Temple, where someone like Asha teacher, Asha Lata Tampuran, who kind of told us, okay, she heard from somewhere getting pulled down. Then as we went and saw, we saw all workers and people who have come to buy this, because the temple board already had put it for Lelam. So we also became like one of those Lelam people who went there, found out the price, and they say they were selling it for 80,000, 1 lakh, and it's a 250-year-old structure, not documented. Hardly anyone knows. Hardly anyone has studied it, and we are just losing the structure. So finally, who is losing the Paranur as a town is losing the structure. The architecture faculty of Kerala, or the architecture crowd, or the architects of Kerala is losing. Students are losing. Many people are losing the whole thing. It's part of Kochil royal family. It was their structure before they went to Trippunithra and things like that. They had come to Paranur from Perumbadappu. The family is called Perumbadappu Swarupam because originally they were thought to be from Malappuram district, Perumbadappu, and because of rivalry with Zamborin and parts of history, they traveled to Paranur and then they went to Cochin. So it's part of our history. But how much of us really know this history? How much of us as architects know this history? Or students know this history? So it's something which because it's all interconnected. We can't just say it's climate change or it's heritage or its old architecture. It's somewhere, it all is our own understanding about the land. It's our own understanding about the structure, our own understanding about the climate. It's all integrated. We can't just separate things. And this is how the inside is. And we are hoping to save the structure. Intac has given a proposal to do some immediate works. We have already completed the documentation. So we hope, and we got archaeology to protect it, although it's not an archaeological monument, they have protected it. So we hope the structure would be saved. Now, this is just one example. If you travel the whole state, I'm sure there will be at least 1,000 examples like this. And 1,000, I'm not just saying as a just like that. It would be more than 1,000. And this is one of our recent projects, Ramanilayam Guest House, where again we were successful in working with a government project. And we are very happy because some of the other projects which we showed, they were always a corporate donor. But in this case, it was purely the PWD, purely the government tourism section, which has supported for this project. Where this is the old structure. And this is before restoration, after restoration, you can see the images. And this is during the process of work. So there are many things in this. Okay, you can see the woodwork and the line plastering which is being done, mogappa. And as we remove, you can see the right photo on the middle photo. As we remove the layers of paint, you can almost find 5-6 layers of paints. It's almost like the markings in a tree, where you have 5 or 10 layers which we remove, and then you find the original line layer. So again, conservation is it's an interesting process. We wash the old tile, reuse it, use most of the old wood. Although time consuming, I would say conservation that way is pretty interesting. And this is after the entire structure got restored. It got inaugurated this year, January 1st. And this is the final picture, one just I think just before inauguration. And if this was not done, why am I showing this as an example? You can have hundreds of examples where even conservation is not done in the right way. You paint over structures, and you use enamel paint, and instead of lime you use cement, and you use ceramic tiles. So how to restore an old building is also something which we need to learn as architects, which we need to learn. Yeah, I think. Yeah. And I would just like to let the slide be there. I'd just like to continue for some 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes before we take any questions. So one thing is like I think maybe I'll take out the slide and just put my face. Yeah. Yeah. So the slide which we showed, I think there are a few points which has to be noticed. It's just that I showed some images, but then the images are just representations. So there are a few points which we all need to understand. One is like what is our take on development? It's something which it's there very important in Kerala, because every time you talk of development, you'll say it's a 50 crore project, 100 crore project, and it's being done. And so it's important that we all question projects, that whether it's needed or not. As architects, it's important that we all question projects, because finally, what do they mean by development? It's something which we need to understand, because many times whatever is being done, because we have worked with governments, we have worked with tourism, many projects. Finally, what happens is like a space gets spoiled, as simple as that, because finally it comes to adding a lot of things, adding a lot of construction. If you have noticed the Uttaranchal floods which happened recently, or why it had happened, you can say many people say it's because of the lack of sensitivity of development that has happened in Himalayas for the past 50 or 100 years. So and then what has happened, an entire dam which is worth some 3,000 crore has flown along with the flood. And again, what is happening in Kerala? How are we building? We are putting those heavy granite foundations. It's directly coming from some quarry in the Western Ghat, and it is causing landslides. It is causing climate change, and it's a thing which is happening everywhere. If you see my own where street, maybe 20 years back, there was there was hardly any apartment. There was just six houses, 6 to 8 cars in this whole street. Now we have something like 100 or 200 houses, at least 50 to 100 cars in this street. So the number of people have grown by 10 times, the number of cars have grown 20 times. And when we look at it, whether it's all needed, many of these houses are just bought for investment purpose by some NRI. And that's something which these are things which we need to take care of, because if in countries like Germany, someone just can't go and buy houses. There is a control by the government. Here you'll find 10 houses, 20 houses. And as architects, we all generally, whenever we say we should not construct so much, we are not too happy. As architects, we are not too happy because our income is directly depending on construction. And people are happy if we build 5,000 square feet house, 10,000 square feet house. If it's a 1 lakh square feet house, which is there in Kerala, we are super happy. So I think and we never think about where the material is coming from, whether it is needed, and what damage it is doing to our climate, what damage it is doing to our land. Hardly do we think about such things. Whenever we get a big project, we are happy to do, and in the whole process, we destroy many things. Yeah, and again, there any public discourses on these subjects? I really doubt. Okay, it's good that MES has organized some seminar on climate change, but how much do we discuss these things in the classroom? Do we discuss Kerala architecture in the classroom, or do we discuss Kerala ecology in the classrooms? I'm not saying we don't do, but I think because again, local history, local ecology, which we need to be learn, because I don't think these are things which is really taught in college. Myself, I have learned many of these after I passed projects. When we got a chance to work with some of the heritage projects, only then I have learned many of these things. So I think these needs to be serious discussions in colleges. And again, I think in the present times, it's very important to discuss this, because we are all suffering from a pandemic. Pandemic has happened. We can say one of the major reasons, they say it's because we have kind of taken out areas meant for wild animals, or you call it uh, zoo. Uh, so what has happened? We have kind of forest areas, areas for wild animals, and in this whole process, I think COVID is a big reminder for us. Diseases like this can happen. So under these aspects, and in 2012, in a called spillover, David Corman, he told animal infections and the next pandemic. And remember, it's in 2012. Much it has had come, and they're all saying that even in Washington University at around that time, they were saying disrupting wild ecosystems would invite more diseases. So many other things like increased human wild animal interaction, increased travel, transportation, and corporate meat production, unscientific agriculture, cutting of trees, extracting minerals, change in tropical forests. So there are so many reasons, but do we really study all this when we talk of development? Or does it come in our discourse in a normal college classroom? When we talk of architecture, do we talk of this? I think we just talk about design. We talk of things like, okay, symmetry, aesthetics, beauty, and we get into very basic discussions. And we talk of Roman architecture, local architecture. So somewhere I feel our whole education system is needs to revamp the way we look at architecture, the way we learn architecture. Because unless and until we do that, where we connect ourselves to the climate, unless and until we connect ourselves to the ecosystem and read more of this, to understand more of this, I think our whole idea of aesthetics also need to change. What we look as aesthetics connected to the it's connected to the and the aesthetics have to come from that. I don't think there's any other aesthetics because a few years back, as I was having some other discussion, one senior member from Intact told me that okay, if you see any structure built by the Aboriginal man, it's all beautiful. Whether you go to South Africa, whether you go to the Aboriginal people, Australia or Brazil, the structures were all beautiful and they had landscape. They had knowledge of the climate and they knew how to build. So the moment these things got corporatized, we human beings have lost the knowledge about building. We've lost the knowledge about health, and we depend on people to come to us and tell us what to do. So I think it's very important that we can't change the entire syllabus in one go, or we can't change the whole ecosystem of learning. Thing we can do as teachers or as people who are part of this ecosystem, we can introduce changes, we can do small workshops, we can do talks where students and teachers are aware of more of such things into our daily discourse or classrooms. And I think that's very critical for our future as architects and as human beings. With these notes, I would like to say open up to questions and you kind of congratulate MES for making this talk or this seminar happen and hoping that more of such discussions do happen. Thank
Uh, Thank you so much, sir. It was a truly inspiring and insightful session. And the conservation techniques that you have adopted for the buildings was truly inspiring. You have started from the giving a brief history of idea about the Kerala context and how it's been sustainable through buildings and the traditional buildings, how it's contextually responsive and site responsive was very evident in your presentations. And also, that was very interesting to notify that the small elements like Bailey, which was the traditional compound walls, was helping to against the flood and disasters. I know that through Vadakunada temple and Ramanilayam guest houses, it was very clear that development which means doesn't mean that demolishing buildings and reconstructing new ones. We can also restore, retrofit the old buildings and can achieve the development. So thank you so much once again, sir. At this moment, I will open the floor to the participants to directly interact with the speaker. And I would like to inform that participants
you.
that the Google form for attendance has been shared in the WebEx chat. I also request to turn on your video so that attendance can be recorded. If you have any query, you can interact with the speaker right now.
इसकी डेफिनेशन लिखनी है
Any any questions?
Okay, sir. We have few questions here.
Any
Can I ask
questions?
you?
Yeah, yeah, sure.
So, what is your opinion on Vastu, especially how Vastu is generalized for all locations and contexts?
Okay, Vastu, my personal opinion is it's nothing but how to build in a land, how to build in a land, because it was also, if you see a temple in earlier days, there was this main carpenter, was this means the person who built with. So these are the two main people. Mathematics of what kind of roof and what is going to put it. So in traditional days, the carpenter and maybe the main mason who would be meeting in the first day. And once you fix the kanaka, the mason can build it, and maybe the traditional carpenter can go to his place, make this house, make this wooden structures ready, come and fix it. So it's like a code. Once you have a code, it's much more right. So you have a connect means, so you are sure that this structure is so much, so you can't go wrong. It's like a formula. So Vastu is nothing but a formula, and again it how you interact, how you use it for the common purpose. So it's the kind of things which we talk of it today are like superstition and things like that would have come much later. Personally, I don't believe in these superstitions. So I believe it's all a system of working.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next question.
It's like okay, you say building is like a human body. It's very true, because once you have the airflow through the building, once the building breathes, it's like human body. So again, these are symbolic.
Okay, sir. We have next question. How can we ensure sustainable demolishing of old structures?
Yeah. Any other question?
Sir, how can we ensure sustainable demolishing of old structures?
To demolish. I think sustainable demolition of old structures is uh, I think old structures mostly are sustainable. See, it's not like demolishing a new structure, because if you demolish a new structure like concrete, it's damaging to that environment. If an old structure, it's mostly lime, it's laterite, it's wood, so you can actually reuse 90% of the old structure, and it also does not damage the land. If it's laterite, lime, and these things, it will just mix into the land, or mud, it will just mix into the land. It's not like concrete blocks, which needs to be, you have to find solutions to process it, or plastic. So I think the way the materials have changed in the last 50 or 150 years, it's damaging to the ecosystem. So I don't think the whole idea of waste is very modern. Have you thought? I don't know if you have thought of it. We talk of waste in a big way, but 50 years back, the whole idea of waste was not there. Everything was reusable. Eh, Almost everything was reusable. So it's only with modern products which got developed. We it's a creation. So whether it's a thing or anything, in the olden days when we pull it down, it adds to the ecosystem. It doesn't create a problem. So you can do it sustainability. It's not an issue. You can even rebuild it, use the laterite, because you would get most of the laterite. So it's very much possible to reuse it. Also, but new houses, it's very tough to reuse. New houses or buildings, it's very tough. You need to again depend on technology as to how to reuse the, like if you see in the Marida flats or any.
Okay, sir, we have a next question in the chat box. Uh, so, what are the possibility for
Yeah.
adaptive reuse in unused old structures in Kerala context?
I think adaptive reuse is the only thing which is possible at the moment. I think it has a high possibility. And again, I think our economy, there are a few more things which is needed. Yeah. There So we need laws for heritage, and then we need adaptive reasoning. In places like Europe, adaptive it's been in the past years. No reason to into it, but I'm very sure in many places it's perfectly possible. Because in Europe, given examples of churches converted to restaurants and things like that. So the purpose will change with time. The purpose will definitely change with time. So we have to find what will work in the present context. And if you see cities, many cities, like if you see cities like Gale in Sri Lanka, you see Penang, most of the European cities, they're doing adaptive reuse in a very, very good way. And the whole thing is like to do that, we need to learn, we also need to do that. We need good engineers. We need engineers with knowledge of masonry structures. That's again something which we don't have much in India. We have a lot of engineers, but we have less engineers with knowledge of masonry architecture. We most of the engineers learn RCC structures. So what happens is like whenever there is an old building, it's being installed. Say you can pull it down. So that's a critical issue which we all are facing, because whenever there is an old structure, there's a small crack. Since they don't know how to repair it or how to sort it out, they'll immediately say, pull it down, do an RCC structure. So it's a group work. We need architects, we need conservation experts, we need heritage experts, we need historians. Structure is important, and then we need good engineers. So it needs to be a combined effort. I would not say that a single architect can do it. Plus, we need town planners or city people who understand it, so that they also part of the process. I'm very sure many of the towns in Kerala, we can do beautiful restoration projects, we can do beautiful conservation projects, which always give more area, which is economically sustainable also. And if you see if you go to Europe, I think they have done it pretty successfully, but they have worked for the last 50 years for it. And if you see many of the old structures in London, the conserved structures are the most expensive structures. Those are the premium spaces. In many cities, if you go to Penang, it's the same. If you go to European cities, it's the same. Mumbai, as an Indian city, I would say it's becoming like that. Some of the areas, like port areas and things like that. But it's just very. If you see the whole of Indian context, which with so much of heritage, the kind of area which we have done is maybe less than 1%. Still, there is huge scope. There's so much of scope for learning, for working, and also to document. Now the some of the structures which I told, like Menacheri structure, the building which got pulled down, we don't have drawings for it. It's a structure, but we don't have drawings. Now even if they want to rebuild it, we don't have any clue. We just have a couple of photographs. We don't have sections, we don't have drawings. Paranur Palace, so we first what we told them is at least let's make some drawings. Then we realized that there's the floor thickness itself more than 25 to 30 centimeters, the floor thickness. So we have layers of lime, we have layers of wood. So it's a kind of a technology which was used 250 years old, which we need to learn, which we need to understand. So I think it's a huge. It's like better than reading any book on conservation. You have an example right in front of you. You can learn from it. So it's something which we have right in front of us, which we need to learn from. I think that's something which all the colleges and try to figure out.
Yes,
What do
sir.
you
One
think?
last question.
Yeah, I think yeah. What
What
do
do
you
you
think
think
about
about
the
the
people who
people?
take up course for 6 months,
Yes,
who take up the course for 6 months and claim themselves to be Vastu consultants? Do you think there is a need to regulate practice of Vastu? Mm, I don't know if it's possible to regulate. It's like whether can you regulate astrologers? I think you always like to think because of some other reason, because of some issues with the home. They always will go to some other person to sort out. We can regulate it. It's important for us to also to understand what is it, what's the science behind it, because I would never discredit any knowledge system. Any knowledge system is good as long as we understand it in a proper sense. What is missing is people learn it, try to commercially practice it, and they kind of take use of the insecurities of the general population. I think that is something which we need to be careful of. And as architects, I think we before we do Vastu traditional architecture, the systems followed in it. So I think once we understand it as architects, I think we are in a much better place, or we are placed ourselves in a much better way.
yes. Thank you, sir, for
And
addressing all the queries. That was
we talk Vastu.
yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello. Yeah. Hello.
Sir, you can continue, sir. Sorry to interrupt. Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
Yeah, yeah. I can listen. Yeah.
Yes, sir. You can continue, sir. Hello, sir. You want to convey anything more, sir, regarding the last question?
Vastu, it's also not the Vastu which is kind of practiced today in terms of superstition and things like that. It's also a kind of a building language, like what I was telling earlier, a kanak or a measurements of a structure. And I think it's like a local language. It's like Malayalam, or it's a local language which you need. I think that also we need to learn. It's just like any dance form or if a music, there's a local language. Similarly, building science also has a local language. There's nothing wrong with understanding it. It's just that we should not fall for these superstitions or some of these things which these Vastu people claim. Again, one more thing is it's something very local. Now, I found books very funny that Penguin has published a book of Vastu of India. A publisher like Penguin has published, and someone from Chennai has written. You have to place room here, you have to place room there. So these things are very funny because you can't just standardize it for the whole country. These are very local. Something in Trivandrum might not be there in Trichur. So these are very local things. So you can't standardize it. The moment you standardize it, it's Indian dance is Bollywood dance. You're just standardizing the entire thing to one something very simple, and you're saying the whole thing is just one. So people do that, and that's also a way of making money. So as architects, we need to be aware. That's all. Other than that, nothing. Yeah. So thanks again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir, for addressing all the queries. That was very inspiring perspective of conservation and sustainability. And I hope everyone will consider the element of conservation while doing the further projects hereafter, because it's very easy to demolish something and it's very tough to create the heritage. So thank you, sir, once again for accepting our invitation and giving us that empowering presentation. So for the participants, the next session with Dr. KK Mohammed is at 3 p.m. So you can stay logged in, join back at the same time by 3 o'clock. So see you all in 3. Attendance link is there in the WebEx chat box. Please mark your attendance.
Thank
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
you. Thank you. Bye. Bye.